Yeah, let's unpack this. In a world just saturated with information and, this enduring fascination with the unknown, how do we even start to cut through the noise? How do we understand these really captivating cultural phenomena?
It's a challenge.
Right. So today, we're diving into a story that sits right at that intersection, the contactee. We're talking about individuals who claim, direct contact with beings from beyond Earth.
And what's fascinating looking at the sources we've gathered is how these narratives pop up during very specific historical moments. They seem to tap into these really deep human needs.
Okay.
So our mission today, looking at this material, is to explore the rise of this whole contactee phenomenon. We'll focus on probably the most prominent figure, George Adamski.
Well, Adamski, yeah, the big one.
Exactly. We need to examine who he was, what he claimed, and crucially, why his story resonated so powerfully and controversially in the 20th century, and how its echoes are, well, arguably still felt today.
So let's define contactee first. What are we actually talking about here?
Okay, so generally when we say contactee, we mean someone claiming direct, often repeated, contact with extraterrestrials. This could be physical, sometimes psychic.
Right.
And the key thing, especially early on, is that these encounters are almost always described as positive. Benevolent aliens, often very human-looking.
Which sets them apart from, say, abduction stories.
Precisely. Abduction narratives often came later and are typically described as frightening, disturbing. Contactees were meeting the friendly space brothers.
Got it. And the timing.
Yeah.
You mentioned specific historical moments.
Yeah, the mid-20th century, that's the cultural peak. We're talking post-World War II, right after the modern UFO era really kicked off in the late 40s.
Okay.
And you absolutely cannot separate it from the Cold War, the pervasive anxiety, the nuclear threat. It was hanging over everything.
So that mix, fear and maybe fascination, created fertile ground.
Exactly. The fear of atomic annihilation was, incredibly real for people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you've got science fiction exploding, filling people's heads with images of space travel, alien encounters, all these possibilities beyond Earth.
Then something shifted, didn't it? After 1947, it wasn't just lights in the sky.
Right. Before 47, claims of contact were pretty sporadic, but with the rise of flying saucer sightings, it changed dramatically. Suddenly, people weren't just seeing things. They were meeting beings. So what did these encounters look like?
Yeah, what were the common threads?
Well, like I said, the aliens are almost always portrayed as benevolent, very human in appearance, even mannerisms. These were the space brothers.
And where did they say they were from?
Interestingly, often from planets right here in our solar system.
Yeah.
Venus, Mars, places we now know are not exactly hospitable to human-like life, but that was a common belief back then, before we had more detailed science.
Okay, so human-looking from nearby planets. What was their message? Always a warning.
Pretty consistently, yeah. They were reported as being really disturbed by Earth's violence, crime, wars, especially nuclear weapons. That was the big one.
The bomb.
Absolutely. Their messages pushed for universal love, brotherhood, and always carried this stark warning. Humanity was on a path to self-destruction.
And they didn't just talk. They took people for rides.
That was a huge part of it. Contactees frequently claimed they were taken aboard spacecraft, flown to other planets. It was part of the whole package.
Oh, wow. How did people take these claims? Skeptics must have had a field day.
Oh, completely. Skeptics usually saw it as charlatanism, con artistry, or sometimes delusion. Some talked about false memories, people maybe prone to fantasy, that sort of thing.
But it wasn't totally out of the blue. There were earlier examples.
There were precedents, yeah. You had figures like Emanuel Swedenborg back in the 18th century claiming psychic contact with people on other planets. And this book from 1891, The Man from Mars, where a Martian apparently spoke English.
Mm-hmm.
But the mid-20th century thing was specific, these benevolent, humanoid space brothers. It offered this powerful story of hope, spiritual guidance. Like a simple fix for really complex global problems, especially nuclear war. It was almost like getting external validation for choosing a moral path, a cosmic morality play, you could say.
Cosmic morality play. I like that. And you mentioned it was mostly literary. Books, newsletters.
Yeah, largely. These folks were writing books, articles, speaking at conventions. They weren't splashed all over the mainstream news like, say, reports of unidentified craft were, which might be why their stories faded a bit compared to the nuts and bolts UFO investigations.
Okay, so that brings us to the main event. George Adamski. Many call him the grand high progenitor of the contactees. Let's trace his journey. His background seems, well, Colorful.
Adamski was definitely a character. Born in Poland, 1891, came to the U.S. as a toddler, didn't have much formal education, but liked being called Professor Adamski.
Professor Adamski, okay. And he had some interesting ventures before UFOs, right? Something about Tibet.
Yes, the Royal Order of Tibet. He founded it in California in the 1930s. It was described as sort of a neo-theosophical group discussing vaguely Eastern philosophy.
Right.
But here's the kicker. During Prohibition, the order got a license to make wine for, quote, religious purposes.
Oh.
Adamski allegedly used this to make quite a bit of money. And there's this reported quote from him saying if Prohibition hadn't ended, he wouldn't have had to get into this saucer crap.
Wow, that's telling. So a pragmatic side, perhaps?
It certainly suggests that, yeah. And it points to a pre-existing worldview. His earlier pamphlets, before UFOs were big, already talked about the dangers of war and greed.
So the themes were already there.
Absolutely. The messages he later claimed to get from Venusians, they really echoed his earlier occult teachings. It's almost like the UFO craze gave him a Trojan horse, maybe, to spread ideas he already believed in.
So 1947 happens, saucer sightings explode.
Yeah.
Adamski shifts his focus.
Dramatically. His interest turns to UFO reports. And then in 1949, he publishes a science fiction novel, Pioneers of Space.
Okay, what was that about?
It depicted a rocket crew visiting the moon, Mars, Venus, and finding these humanoid, basically Caucasian civilizations. They'd achieved peace by overcoming materialism, greed, the stuff Earth was struggling with.
And he didn't just see it as fiction.
No, he actually encouraged people to use it like a textbook for discussion groups, more than just escapism.
So this really raises the question, doesn't it? Was he a true believer? An opportunist? Maybe a bit of both.
It's the central question with Adamski. His background, the Royal Order, Pioneers of Space, it all suggests a pre-existing framework he skillfully repackaged. The UFO phenomenon arrives, science fiction is booming, the public is hungry for answers, for hope. It was the perfect storm for his message.
Which leads us to the iconic encounter, the one that made him famous, November 1952, California desert. Set the scene for us.
Right, this is the core of the Adamski legend. He lived near Mount Palomar Observatory, though. Importantly, he worked at a hamburger stand nearby, not at the observatory.
On the hamburger stand connection, okay.
So he claimed he and several friends were out in the Mojave Desert. They see a big cigar-shaped craft, then a smaller saucer lands nearby.
And someone gets out.
Someone gets out. A being Adamski named Orthon.
Orthon. What did Orthon look like?
Adamski described him as very human-like. Long, sandy blonde hair, wearing a kind of one-piece outfit like a ski suit, exceptionally beautiful, apparently, with skin like a medium-colored suntan.
And how do they communicate?
Through telepathy, or what Adamski called thought beaming.
Thought beaming. And the message. Still about the bomb.
Very much so. Orthon, supposedly from Venus, gave this urgent warning about atomic weapons, Earth's destructive path, claiming it could affect the balance of life across the whole solar system.
Wow.
The message was, choose peace, universal brotherhood, spiritual enlightenment.
And there was evidence. Footprints.
Yes, Adamski and his group claimed they took plaster casts of Orthon's footprints, and these footprints supposedly had mysterious symbols on them.
Okay. Then came the photograph.
A few weeks later, December 52, Adamski claims he photographed a Venusian ship coming down. That photo became incredibly famous. It basically defined what a flying saucer looked like for decades.
And the book followed soon after.
Flying Saucers Have Landed, 1953. Co-authored with a British writer, Desmond Leslie. Detailed that first encounter. It was an instant bestseller, huge boost to the UFO craze, inspired loads of other contactees.
And his final appeal in the book really struck a chord, didn't it?
Yeah, he urged people to believe in the Space Brothers for our own good, to recognize and welcome the men from other worlds. It offered this sense of cosmic community, I think.
So that first encounter really set the template.
Absolutely.
Right.
It established the archetype. It wasn't just seeing something weird, it was getting a direct, urgent, benevolent message from supposedly superior beings, offering guidance, a simple answer to these huge, terrifying problems like nuclear war.
But Adamski didn't stop there, did he? The stories got bigger.
Oh, yeah. His 1955 sequel, Inside the Spaceships, really upped the ante. More meetings. Not just Venusians, now he's meeting people from Mars, Saturn. He claimed he was taken on scout ships, then to this huge mothership, flown around the moon, visited other planets.
And his descriptions of these planets,
Yeah.
were they scientifically accurate?
Not even close. He described Venus as this lush, Earth-like paradise. Forests, cities, advanced people. Mars had canals, which was an old, already dubious theory.
Shells on Mars, right?
And even the moon. He claimed it had hidden bases, an atmosphere, water, plants, even moon people living on the, quote, dark side.
Moon people. Okay. And there was a wise old teacher involved.
Yes, he claimed he was tutored by this nearly 1,000-year-old master, sharing the secrets of the universe, pushing the same themes, universal law, peace, spiritual evolution.
And he introduced female space travelers, too.
He did, these incredibly lovely young women from space. Adamski seemed surprised women were out there, noting their beauty and friendliness.
So the universe kept expanding. Then came his 1960 book, Flying Saucers Farewell. What was that about? Trying to answer critics.
Partly, yeah. It often got retitled Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery. He tried to defend his claims, even invented some cosmic mathematics to explain saucer flight. He insisted his descriptions were science fact, not science fiction.
And by this time, he was a global celebrity.
Oh, absolutely. World lecture tours, New Zealand, Europe, India. He got high-profile attention, met Queen Juliana of the Netherlands in '59.
Really? The Queen.
Yep. He also claimed secret meetings with Pope John XXIII, even President Kennedy, UN officials, though these are, his claims.
And he started talking about a silence group.
Right. As criticism mounted, he blamed it on the sinister silence group, maybe the Air Force, maybe others, trying to suppress the truth. It echoes that whole Men in Black idea that was starting to emerge.
It's quite the evolution.
Yeah.
As science learned more about Venus and Mars, his stories got less plausible, but he just kept going.
He did. Which suggests maybe the literal truth wasn't the main point for him, or at least not eventually. It became more about reinforcing this belief system, this spiritual message he wanted to spread, rather than presenting verifiable facts about space.
Okay, let's talk about the evidence, or lack thereof. The photos were a huge deal. How did they hold up?
Not well under scrutiny. Experts like J. Allen Hynek from Project Blue Book, the Air Force's UFO investigation team, basically dismissed them as crude fakes.
And the most famous one, the Venusian scout ship. The chicken incubator.
That's the one. It looks suspiciously like a type of chicken-egg incubator, those 3 spheres underneath. Adamski called them landing gear. But others pointed out they looked exactly like light bulbs. NASA engineers later examined the photos and agreed the light sources were consistent with commercially available bulbs from that time.
And critics could fake them easily.
Yep. People showed you could replicate his saucer photos using things like a Chrysler hubcap, a coffee can, ping pong balls. Pretty common stuff.
Ouch. What about the witnesses to the Orthon encounter? Did they back him up?
That's where James Moseley's 1955 expose was really damaging. He interviewed some of Adamski's own witnesses from that day.
No.
They apparently revealed they hadn't actually seen the saucer land or Orthon emerge. They said Adamski had walked off into the desert alone, came back later, and then told them what he'd supposedly seen.
So secondhand accounts, basically.
Pretty much, according to Moseley's investigation.
And scientifically, I mean, Venus, Mars, the moon, his descriptions were just impossible, right?
Completely incompatible with what science knew even then, let alone now. Venus is hellishly hot and toxic. Mars is cold, dry, thin atmosphere. The moon is airless. Thriving humanoids, just not possible.
And the idea that Earth's nuclear tests threatened other planets.
Scientifically negligible. The radiation from the sun hitting those planets is vastly greater than anything drifting from Earth's tests, especially through their atmospheres or lack thereof.
So widespread skepticism was inevitable, even among serious UFO researchers.
Oh, definitely. Many ufologists saw contactees like Adamski as, well, the lunatic fringe. They worried these outlandish claims would discredit the whole field of studying unidentified aerial phenomena.
Right. They wanted credible sightings, not space brothers.
Exactly. Donald Kehoe, head of NICAP, a major civilian UFO group, flat out said contactees were fabricating their stories. Carl Sagan famously pointed out how these aliens would answer vague philosophical questions but clammed up on anything specific or technical.
Like proving Fermat's last theorem or something.
Precisely. And Arthur C. Clarke, the sci-fi giant, he called Adamski's believers nitwits, said Adamski did a real disservice by muddying the waters.
Even Carl Jung weighed in.
He did. Someone sent him Adamski's work. Jung apparently found Adamski an absurd fabricator, especially the angelic movie star Venusians. Jung was more interested in the psychological angle, why people believed in these things, seeing them as modern myths.
Did the government take him seriously at all? FBI? Blue Book?
They investigated him, yes. Monitored his activities, but probably less because they believed in Orthon and more out of concern for his public influence, maybe potential fraud, or just keeping tabs on unusual social movements during the Cold War.
So with all this debunking, Why did people keep believing? You mentioned this spiritual void.
I think that's a big part of it. Whether Adamski meant to or not, he tapped into something. Science, especially astronomy, coming from places like Palomar, was revealing this immense, maybe lonely cosmos. Adamski offered the opposite. A universe full of friends, guidance, a cosmic order, a moral system. He provided space-age angels for people who maybe didn't connect with traditional religion anymore.
Space-age angels, that's evocative.
Right.
So regardless of the truth, his impact was huge. How did he shape UFO culture?
Undeniably, he practically kick-started the whole Contactee movement. He set the template. Benevolent, human-like aliens, spiritual messages, warnings about humanity. Later contactees like Howard Menger, Daniel Fry, Truman Bethurem, they often followed his basic pattern.
And the look of the saucer.
That iconic Adamski saucer, the disc with the 3 balls underneath, became the image of a flying saucer for so many people. You see it influencing depictions in movies, illustrations, everywhere for decades.
He also offered a different kind of alien story, didn't he?
Yeah, in contrast to all the hostile invasion stories popular in sci-fi back then, he gave people friendly space brothers, an optimistic vision of contact, hope, not just fear.
And people still believe him today, even after his death in 1965.
There's still a core of true believers. The George Adamski Foundation exists, fiercely guarding his legacy, his writings. His obituary was wild, claimed he was a member of the Interplanetary Council. His soul was still helping the Space Brothers. Even cited a solar disk birthmark as proof he was a child of the sun.
Wow, that's a
And
dedication.
And you can still see traces of his ideas, that kind of cosmic spirituality filtering into things like modern ancient aliens theories, parts of the New Age movement. His imagery pops up in shows like The X-Files, maybe inspired designs in series like The Invaders. He left a real cultural footprint.
So what's fascinating here is how these stories, even though they're full of inconsistencies, debunked evidence, they became this major cultural touchstone.
Exactly. He didn't just add to the UFO buzz, he helped define its early shape. He influenced the kinds of questions people asked about aliens, what they expected, for years. It just shows the incredible power of a compelling story and that deep human desire for meaning, especially when facing the unknown or the extraordinary.
So what does this all mean then? George Adamski, Professor Adamski from the Hamburger Stand, offered this grand, hopeful story in a really turbulent time. A universe where we weren't alone, where powerful, kind beings cared about us, and maybe the answers to our biggest problems were just a telepathic message away.
Which leads to a thought, maybe for you, the listener. In our own world now, also saturated with information, also anxious, what kind of space brother narratives are we looking for today? Are we still drawn to simple answers for complex problems, maybe from sources that feel compelling even if they aren't entirely factual? Are we still trying to fill some kind of spiritual or existential gap?
It makes you wonder, how much of the appeal of figures like Adamski, consciously or not, taps into that fundamental human wish, that desire to connect with something bigger, find meaning, guidance, maybe even salvation, not necessarily out there in the stars, but right here in the stories we tell ourselves about them.